Magnetize your minis, flight stands, custom kits, and all the hobby supplies you'll need from themagnetbaron.com.
Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel for craftworld.eldar.com. I'm Brent, and in this video I'm talking about Night Spinners and why they're awesome and why you should be running them in your 10th edition competitive Aeldari lists. But first, I wish to acknowledge two things. The first is that this video is aimed predominantly at newer players or less competitive players or players who've come back after a long time, because I think anybody who's playing GTs on a regular basis knows how good Night Spinners are. It's unignorable. At least one Night Spinner has appeared, I think, in every single Aeldari list that has gotten to the podium of a GT since the big rules changes. Many of those lists are running 3. So for you Night Spinner skeptics, sorry kids, there really just isn't room to say that they're bad. They're not bad. They are in fact excellent, even at 180 points, or people would not be podiuming and winning GTs with even 3 of them in their lists. The other thing that I wish to acknowledge is that this is another short form video. I've been making some short form videos because people have asked for this. More rapid content, shorter videos, they said. So I'm doing this. Long form videos are not gone. They're coming back. They're coming back soon. I love making them. I know not all of you love long form videos, but also this is a thing that I do for people for free. So I get to make some long form videos because I like doing it. Okay, let's talk Night Spinners. So the reason that people think that Night Spinners are not good, the people who think that they're not good, let's just start by acknowledging this, is that they have gotten pretty expensive relative to some of our other damage output units, and they don't have any AP. So even though they have flat 2 damage and good strength and good fire output at a really good range and devastating wounds, there are skeptics who just can't get over the fact that Night Spinners don't have any AP, and so are often going to be coming up against a 3-up save and are shooting at -1 to hit when they're shooting indirect. I get it, kids. If you're thinking about the unit purely as target elimination at 180 points, we have stuff that hits way harder for that point value. So here's why Night Spinners rock. Here's how lists need to be built if they're going to incorporate Night Spinners in a major way. Let's start with why Night Spinners rock. 1. Night Spinners offer fabulous control powers that in some matchups, not in every matchup, in some matchups can simply straight up win you the game. In some matchups, it doesn't really matter that the Night Spinners aren't doing a bunch of damage. The monofilament web power that subtracts 2 from your opponent's move characteristic and prevents it from advancing if they just get hit by the weapon is obscenely good. It is ridiculously good. There are certain armies that actually rely on being able to advance to have any game at all, Custodes among them. Being able to just pick 1 to 3 of your opponent's Custodes units, depending on how many Night Spinners you have, and reducing their movement from a 5 to a 3 and taking away their ability to advance is pretty crippling. And even if your opponent's not running Custodes, if they have other fast units that need to make advance moves that they're going to get into the midfield with, your Night Spinners can pin those units in your opponent's backfield. They can keep them out of the game for an extra turn and give you all sorts of force advantages in the midfield. Especially when you're dealing with your opponent's midfield bully units that want to get into the midfield, be tough, push you around. Your Night Spinners can just pick units in your opponent's list and just prevent them from being able to do that for 1 to 2 turns longer than they would have previously been able to do it. And if you are a skilled player, that can just straight up honestly win you a game, right? It can swing the whole thing in your favor, being able to dictate what your opponent can and cannot move into the midfield and when. Now, those are advanced play tactics. You need to know what units to pin down. You need to know which things in your list will be able to dominate which things in your opponent's list, and so which things, therefore, not to pin down and to allow to come out and play and lose terribly. But even if you aren't like Warhammer Alexander the Great, just the ability to look at your opponent's units that are pretty fast, that can advance and shoot, which generally are the bane of Space Elves. Like, Space Elves in part win games. It's changed a little bit in this edition, right? Like Space Elves are like weirdly durable, which I'm gradually getting used to. But even in a list that has like double avatars that's reasonably durable, we still have some squishy fragile units that we don't want our opponents to get a beat on. And so the ability to pick out your opponent's units that are good answers for Space Elves, again, like a bike unit, and take away their ability to advance and limit their movement, that's pretty powerful too. So if you don't know what else to shoot, shooting the stuff that's trying to move on to an objective, if you can keep your opponent from getting to an objective for an extra turn, that can be game winning if it gives you an objective advantage such that you're scoring 5 points more and they're scoring 5 points less. And then picking units that want to get line of sight and target your stuff and preventing them from doing that for a turn, that's pretty powerful. So first reason Night Spinners rock that monofilament web ability is crazy. It limits your opponent's ability to score. It limits your opponent's ability by getting to objectives. It limits your opponent's ability to kill your stuff. It also, by the way, limits your opponent's ability to score where secondary objectives are concerned. A full 50% of the tactical objectives in the secondary objective deck require you to get to certain places on the field with units and either do stuff or just be there. And if you can look at your opponent's list and be like, well, I don't know exactly what secondary objectives you have, but I do know that these are the units you would use to score them, these highly mobile units. So how about those units are now slow and can't advance? Like, that's probably going to be worth some points on the back end of the game. Also, people who play with fixed objectives, probably at least one of the fixed objectives they're playing with, certainly into your Eldar, maybe multiple fixed objectives, are going to be about being certain places on the board. And so again, having a unit that can shut that down, it might not be scoring you points, but in a game with only 2 players, denying your opponent points is just as good, almost, because of as scoring points yourself. With reference to winning the game, it is. In terms of how tournament outcomes are sometimes calculated, it isn't necessarily. Sometimes it's better to score points yourself. But denying your opponent's points brings you closer to winning the game just as effectively as scoring points yourself. Okay, 2. Another way in which the Night Spinner is really good. The ability to kill stuff out of line of sight in your opponent's backfield has fabulous scoring and killing synergy with other stuff that's really good in an Eldar list. First of all, I will just acknowledge the Yinkarn. The Yinkarn is an incredibly powerful tool that is showing up in a lot of top Eldari lists. I love it. It's like, just in terms of how it plays on the table, it is my favorite unit to play with. It is so much fun tactically. I'm not like a big lore Ynnari guy. I think the Ynnari are interesting. But wow, the Yinkarn is fun to play with on the table. When you kill something, you can just put the Yinkarn where the thing you killed was, and it can still shoot, and it can still charge, and it can show up as close as it wants to enemy units. It can jump on objectives. It's amazing. So having Night Spinners that can kill some fragile infantry unit or biker unit in your opponent's backfield gives you just crazy synergy with the Yinkarn, because now you can kill the unit protecting your enemy's home objective. And you can take that away from them, which is sometimes worth mega points. There's also a secondary mission that gives you mega points for that. Being able to, by dropping the Yinkarn, you kill the thing that's there, and then you drop the Yinkarn on it. In some games, that might just win you the game. And then the Yinkarn is there, able to wreak havoc in your opponent's backfield. That's so freaking good. Also, the Night Spinner can clear enemy chaff from the backfield in places where you might need to put down some other scoring unit, like unit of Swooping Hawks and Deep Strike. If you know that in a turn, you're going to need to, say, score an objective that requires you to be within 9 inches of the corners of the board on your opponent's side of the table. Well, if there's some fragile unit of cultists or termagants or something screening you out in your opponent's backfield, well, your Night Spinners can kill that unit, and then you'll be able to get in there with your Hawks and do what it is you need to do, or with some other deep striking unit. The ability to kill stuff out of line of sight on your opponent's side of the table gives your other killing and scoring units, if you have the right ones in your list, tremendous potential for doing their jobs too. So that's another way that Night Spinners are awesome. It's also just good to have some indirect fire units in your army that have really crazy long range, the 48 inches, because it means you've got stuff in your own backfield, controlling your backfield objective, staying out of line of sight, and also screening out enemy deep strikers. So having some units that can participate in the battle while screening enemy deep strikers out of your own backfield is pretty freaking valuable. Okay, lastly on the stuff the Night Spinners, the stuff that the Night Spinners do, rather than just how to play them effectively in a list or how to build around them, which is the other thing I'm going to talk about. Night Spinners are better at killing than they initially appear to people who haven't actually been playing with them, right? So, yeah, they don't have any AP. D6 plus 3 shots with blast is a lot. That is a lot. So against a larger infantry unit, something that has 10 models, right, they're going to be actually doing D6 plus 5, which is really good. But the combination of devastating wounds and twin linked is really excellent. So twin linked allows you to reroll all failed wounds. Well, if you're running the only craft world attachment that we currently have access to, you're therefore going to fire D6 plus some number of plus 3 plus whatever your blast bonus is shots with one reroll, and then you're get -1 to hit. But when it comes time to wound, you could potentially reroll all of your wound dice if you need to. So you're going to come up with not only more wounds, but also more 6s, triggering devastating wounds. Devastating wounds no longer go to mortal wounds, but it still means that your Night Spinner is likely to do some damage even to something that's pretty tough, right? So even if you're targeting something that's like better than strength 7 all the way up to toughness 12, 13, if you're wounding that thing on a 5 up and you're rerolling everything, you actually stand a 50% chance, better than 50% chance with each of those dice of wounding the thing. And some of those dice are just going to auto wound, right, on the 6s and go straight to through the armor save to flat 2 damage. And then you can also force them to make some saves. And if they save on a 3 up, hopefully they'll fail like 1. And so a Night Spinner can put 4 or 6 wounds on some target that should normally be out of its like pay grade, which means that like even if your opponent's not running a lot of infantry or stuff your Night Spinners can kill, they can still do damage to tanks and monsters, right? They're really good against infantry, especially against heavy infantry. They're pretty good against other stuff. There's no list in which they're just not good at all. Having the underslung shuriken cannon too, if you get into the late game, your Night Spinners don't necessarily have to hide. They can come out. They can start legit hitting on 3s. And that shuriken cannon, there's no reason not to throw it on there because it's free now. With this, it's sustained hits 1 and 3 attacks. If you're firing the Doomweaver and the shuriken cannon and you're not taking a penalty to hit on the Night Spinner and you're re-rolling one of your hit rolls and then all of your wound rolls, this thing is a frigging terror in the late game when people don't have a lot left and they're trying to jump on midfield objectives to shore up some scoring. Also, with that 14-inch move, in the late game, your Night Spinners can pop out and start scoring for you. They can jump on midfield objectives when your opponent doesn't have a lot of tank killy stuff yet. They can just get places that they need to be on the table for secondary scoring purposes. They've really got some game in the late game. Okay, if you are including Night Spinners in your list, here are some considerations. 1, having stuff that has good synergy with long distance indirect fire, I think is a must. If you're going to run, certainly if you're running more than one Night Spinner, I really think you want the Yin-Karn. But also, your Night Spinner is making holes in your opponent's line, and then you need stuff that can exploit those holes for scoring purposes. So Hawks are really good with that free deep strike. Warp Spiders are really good. One of the things that this unit is going to do is to help you score, and you need to have the units in your army that will enable it to do that. The other thing that you need is a midfield bully presence. So a list with multiple Night Spinners may have the problem that while it's a good shooting list, it probably doesn't want to be engaged. So you generally need at least one midfield bully unit to protect your Night Spinners. The Avatar of Cain can do this. 10 Wraithguard with Wraith Cannons and maybe a Spirit Seer can do this. And the other thing that actually works reasonably well still is a D Cannon. The D Cannon has a 24-inch range, but it's because it's got the one reroll to hit and the one reroll to wound. Even with the changes to Devastating Wounds, it's kind of a midfield bully unit. It's also gotten a bit more expensive. Some of you are pretty skeptical about that, but there was a list that recently, I think, won a big GT. It was definitely in the top 3. I think it actually won, that had 3 Night Spinners and a D Cannon, and the D Cannon really did good work keeping dangerous enemy units from getting anywhere near the Night Spinners. So you need to insulate them. You need to protect them. You need to have your own bully units to screen and dominate, or at least answer threats to the midfield, so you don't get overrun in your backfield. But frankly, any Craft Worlds list that you're running at 2,000 points, the way things currently stand, cannot rely on simply outmaneuvering an opponent. You do need some kind of bully unit, I think, in just about every list. But it is, I think, extra important to think about when you're running Night Spinners in a big way. So that's what I've got. Night Spinners are really good. I find in my own lists that they're really good in concert with Fire Prisms. My own most competitive list is currently running 2 of each. I know some of you out there talk like it's an either or proposition. It isn't. A lot of these GT lists include both. There are lists that only include Night Spinners, 3 of them, but they really do work well in concert with one another. So there we are. Another short form video. If you have not liked the video, I hope that you will click well, presuming you did in fact like the video, I hope that you will click like. If you have not left a comment, I hope that you will leave one. And if you have not subscribed, it would be great if you subscribed to the channel. And I will be back again soon with something new. Take care.